Generative AI is an amazing technology, but there are some things that it just can't do. Ask a large language model what the time is. It won't know. Ask a large language model to perform some complex mathematics. It won't be able to do that either, although it might pretend to be able to do it, and in some cases it actually can, and in some cases it just fails miserably. So how can we solve this problem? How can we give a large language model access to the tools that it needs to be able to solve that kind of problem? Hello, my name is Mike Chambers and I'm a Senior Developer Advocate for Amazon Web Services. And in this video, we're going to take a look at agents, tools, and function calling and how you can get it set up really quickly inside of Amazon Bedrock. Let's head into the AWS console. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to go to Bedrock, and I've got some large language models enabled inside of my account. If I just go to the menu here and scroll down to Playgrounds, I'm going to click on Text. And I'm going to be a little bit unfair to the models that I've got here. So let's go in and select Anthropic, and I'm going to select Claude 2.1. There's a reason for that, because it's going to pop up later on as well. Let's go in here and write a prompt, and I'm going to say, what is the time? And this is an unfair question. There's no way for the model to know. It doesn't know because it wasn't trained on live data. You can't train it on live data. All it knows is the information that it was trained on at a certain point in time. So it comes back with this response: sorry, I don't actually have access to the current time as an AI assistant. Now, this is a really good answer. I mean, in the past, like a year ago, if you asked a large language model what the time was, it may well hallucinate and give you a time, even though it was completely and utterly wrong. Let's have another go. It actually might be able to do this one. Let's say, what is 10 plus 20. I'll put a question mark in, and let's go ahead and run that. And the answer comes back, it equals 30. Okay, so that was a relatively easy, or very, very easy maths question. And so it may well have seen this kind of information when it was being trained. So it's got a rudimentary sense of mathematics. This sort of opens this up to a slight problem. This might make us feel like this model's quite good at doing maths, when really it's kind of not. The only way that we can be sure that it gets these answers right is by giving it access to some tools, such as a calculator, and in the terms of the time, a watch or a clock, so it can actually see what the time is. So let's do just that. If I go back to the menu here on the left-hand side, I'm going to scroll down to agents, because agents give the large language model access to tools that they can use to answer questions just like this. So let's have a go at configuring one inside of our Amazon Bedrock account. So just up there behind my head is a Create Agent button. So if I press that, then we can give a name for our agent. So let's say that this is our demo agent, because I have no imagination. And then it's asking for a description, but it says it's optional. And so it is optional. We don't need this, but there are other places that we do need to put in some text, because it'll help the agent out when it works. So I'll leave the description blank and click on Create. Okay, so that should then create us with a shell of our agent, and we can go and put some of the other parameters that we need in there and give it some tools. So the first thing here is it's asking for a role. We can either select a role that we already have inside of our account, which will give the agent access to be able to integrate and work with Bedrock, or we can get it to create a role for us, which is what I'm going to do. We also have the options to be able to select different models. It currently has Anthropic Claude v2.1, but check out your console. You might have access to Claude 3, and that's definitely worth a look. But I'm going to keep this as 2.1 so that we can compare and contrast with those tests that we did before. Then we have instructions for the agent. And notice this is not optional. This is where we actually provide some text which is going to get used inside of the prompt when the agent is running. So I will say, you are a helpful agent who can perform basic maths, and it will be very basic maths, and tell the time. Okay, I think I've spelled most of that right. No, here we go. I have to say, large language models are very good at dealing with my spelling, but it's good to try and get it right if we can. Okay, so we've got that set up there. And the next thing that we are going to be doing is setting up some action groups. But before we do that, I'm going to scroll to the top and click Save and Exit, just to make sure that I've got all of those parameters set on our agent. Okay, so we've got a couple of successful messages there. Now I can go back to Edit in Agent Builder and scroll down, and there I've got all of my values set, so I can go ahead and create some action groups. So action groups contain the tools that we want to give to the agent. So let's go and add some action groups in. I'm going to click Add, and we'll call this the demo action group, because again, no imagination. We don't need a description here. What really matters though is how we actually define the action group. And we're going to do this the quick way, which is defining with function details, and then in action group invocation, we're going to select quick create a new lambda function. And this is going to create a stub lambda function for us, which is going to be the destination for all of the logic that needs to be run. So in this case, the adding up of numbers and the telling of the time. So I'm going to leave that selected, but we have some other options there, and we'll take a look at those a little bit later. So it's asking us for the details of the first function. So we'll call this get time. So this is going to be our time telling function. We don't need a description here, but I will type one in for my own benefit here. So gets the current time in UTC. Whoops, UTC. And then it gives us a section where we can send parameters to that function. So the large language model will look for parameters in the context of the conversation and then send it to the function. But we don't need any in this particular case, so I'm going to miss that out, and I'm going to click on Add Another Function. So here's our second function, and this is going to be called Add to Numbers. So like I said, super simple maths, but we're going to do some maths. So this is going to add two numbers and return the result. And in this particular case, we do want to send some parameters to this function. So let's get rid of the test agent at the side so we can make this a little bit bigger. And let's get rid of my head, and let's add a couple of parameters in here. So I'm going to click Add Parameter, and the first parameter is going to be called number 1. I'm going to click the tick to set that. And the description for this, and this is important because again, it'll be part of the prompt, is it'll be the first number to be added. And the tip here is that if you can understand what it means, then a large language model can probably understand what it means too. So let's click tick on that. The type, well, I want a number. I'm going to tick that, and then it is actually required. I can't add two numbers together unless I have two numbers. So I'm going to set that to true, tick that, and then I'm going to add another parameter. So I'm going to add in the number 2, tick that, second number to be added. I'm going to tick that, and again, we're going to set it to number, and we're going to set that to true as well. Okay, so now we've got both of our tools configured or ready to be configured. All we have to do is click Save or Add at the bottom here. So I'm going to click Add. Now that's going to take just a moment, and the reason why that's going to take just a moment is because it's actually creating a lambda function for us. So it's creating a lambda function with stub code inside of it, and it's also setting up the permissions for the lambda function so that the agent can call it. So do know that if you're creating your own lambda function, then as well as the IAM role, you also need a resource policy for the lambda function, but that's just all been done for us. So if we now scroll down and take a look, we've got everything set. We've got our role there, the model, we've got the instructions, and here is our action groups. If I click in on the demo action group and scroll down again, you'll notice that now it says select an existing lambda function. Basically, it has made a lambda function, so that is the mode that we are now in. And here is the name of the lambda function. And if I click view, it'll take me to the lambda function in the lambda console. So let's take a quick look at that code, and then we will need to update it. So let me just scroll up here a little bit. move that over to the side a little bit more and zoom in so that you can see it. Okay, so it's a normal Python Lambda function. It's got its Lambda handler with the event on its way in. And so from that, I guess the key things that it takes from that is the function name. So the function that needs to be called, that's what the agent has determined, and the parameters to send to that function. And then for the rest of this, basically all it's going to do is say and return to the large language model, the function and the function name was called successfully. So it's just some sample code for us. So we don't want to do that, so I'm going to remove that out. The rest of the code in here is basically about sending the response back to the agent. What I'm going to do is I'm going to include some code here which is going to perform the adding of two numbers, which is obviously not going to be that hard, and also the telling of the time. So I've got some code I've already got, so let's paste that in section by section. So first of all, let's put in a function here for getting the time. Super simple, just returns a string which is formatted with the UTC time. So that's great. Now we need to have a function which is going to add two numbers. And guess what? That function's really simple too. So it takes in two numbers and it adds them together. So just a simple demo of the capability here. But we do have some parameters there. So we do need to get out of the parameters that are sent in those numbers to add together. So let's get those out of the parameters by setting up this dictionary. So I've got a dictionary here I'm creating called parameter dictionary, or paramdict, and inside of there you can see that it's going to take apart the data structure which is sent in. And the data structure which is sent in has a name to it, a value to it, and a type. So for us here, as long as it's a number, then we're going to take that out of the parameters and add it into our parameter dictionary. So that's ready now for when we want to call the code. So all we need now is a set of logic to look at what function's being called and then call those functions with parameters if necessary. This is a big block of code, but we will look through it. So let me paste that in and scroll back up to where it started. Okay, it started from here. So we're taking the function, or the name of the function that arrived. If it's add two numbers, then we're going to get number one and number two from our parameter dictionary. And we're doing some checks there. And then if they are set, if they exist, then we're going to just make sure that they're integers in case they're strings. And then we're going to add those two numbers together with that function that we created. We're going to get the result out of that, and then we're going to format the result into some natural language that will ultimately be sent back to the large language model. So the result of adding number one and number two is the result. So super, super simple. And we've also got some error checking and some validation in there as well that will send back different error messages to the large language model to let it know whether we're successful or not. And ultimately, the response body will be created here with the result, which hopefully is the result of adding two numbers together. If the function name is getTime, then super simple. We're going to call the getTime function, no parameters to send in this particular case, and we're going to format the result that comes back from that into a string. The time is, and then whatever the time is, and we'll send that back. And ultimately we'll send that back to the large language model. Now here we have the else, the very end. It's basically the same as we had in the stub model, stub function in the first place, which is the function something was called successfully. And it's basically just there so that we can continue to do our testing and development work. So let's save this Lambda function with its updated code. I'm going to click deploy. And so that's now deployed successfully. If I go back to the Amazon Bedrock service then, whoa, way too zoomed in. Let's zoom that back out a little bit. And we haven't actually done anything different here. So there's nothing to save here, but we do want to test this model. So I'm going to click to the bottom, save and exit. We're going to go back out and I'm going to click the prepare button. So this will prepare the agent for us to be able to test it just over here on the right hand side. So let's get rid of me and, well, let's ask a really simple question. What is the time? So, super simple question, but something that a large language model wouldn't normally be able to do. The large language model in this case, working with the agent, should analyze to know that we need to go and call the getTime function, and it did it. So the time is, and it's got the time is, and it's 9:13:57. That's UTC, by the way, which is correct. So it's got some search result tags there, so that's something that we could work on to remove that. But let's also ask it another question. What is 10 plus, I don't know, 100? Let's make it more difficult. 123. This is actually probably something that the model may be able to do itself, but you'll notice here that we've got these show trace links. And so we can actually look in here at what the agent was actually doing. When this result has come back, which it has, so 10 plus 123, the result of adding 10 and 123 is 133, which of course it is. So let's have a look at this trace. So I'm going to navigate in here. And we've got several different steps that the agent goes through. So we've got pre-processing, orchestration, and knowledge base. And then we've got this post-processing trace at the end here. So in the pre-processing trace, we can actually see what the agent is actually up to. And it's got a whole bunch of its prompt in here. But if we scroll towards the bottom, we get to sort of like the really important part, which is this part here. The user is asking to add 10 plus 123. This question can be answered by the function calling the agent using the demo action group add two numbers. So it's already figured out that that's something that it can do. Therefore, this input should be sorted into category D. So basically, it's a safe thing to do. And you can read more about what category D is by looking at this massive prompt above and digging into that, what that prompt looks like. There's category D. Questions that can be answered by assisted or function calling agents using only the functions. So these are all of the instructions which have been provided. Now you can actually customize these, but I'm using them straight out of the service. So that was the first step. Then we go to our orchestration and knowledge base. So let's have a look at step 2. And we navigate in here and we scroll again towards the bottom. There's a lot of templated prompt engineering in here. But if we scroll down, then we have this bit here, which I wanted to find. So this invocation input. And you can see here the action group invocation input. It's got the action group name. So it's got the function name and it's got the parameters. And this is the payload that will get sent into our lambda function. So it's got that there. And then it's got the output. So the result of adding 10 and 123 is 133. So it's got all of that information here in this sort of debug step in the trace that we can get back from the console. Okay, so that was probably quite a lot to take in, but we've gone through how to deploy agents inside of your account using the console. Now, if you're interested in getting a head start with this, then I actually do have a project that's inside of GitHub. It's a SAM, so Serverless Application Model project. So even if you're not familiar with that, then that's okay. The instructions are actually in the README for that actual repository. So I'll put a link to that in the description below. You can actually deploy that into your account. It does require an API key from an open weather service because it's basically an outfit assistant. You can ask it what to wear given the time of day and the location, and it will take the time, the location, and the weather, combine those things together and give you an outfit recommendation. So as I say, the link to that is in the description below. All the instructions on how to deploy that is included in that repository as well. I hope you found this video useful and you can see how agents can be used inside of Amazon Bedrock. This is just scratching the surface of what Amazon Bedrock can do. Please like this video if you liked it. And if you want to see more videos like this, well, you know what to do. Subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon as well. And just one more thing before we go. If you like content like this, then head over to community.aws and community.aws/generative AI, where we have a curated list of articles all about generative AI. Some of them I've written, and some of them you could write too. So create an account, post your projects in there, comment on others, like and share, and join in the community conversation. So thank you so much for watching this video all the way through to the very end. And until the next time, keep on building.